Welcome to Table Kōrero. Tonight we are celebrating Matariki. My name is Tuihana Ohia. I'm the director and founder of Woo, and we're super excited because tonight we've got a number of gorgeous Wāhine joining us to talk around some of the challenges they've had over the past year and what are some of the intentions for the year ahead. We've got the gorgeous Rochelle Marumaru, the wonderful Hayes Putarunui, and also Kate Cherrington. And now I'm going to hand it over to Kate Cherrington to open us up with opening karakia.
Tēnā tātou e tiwi, kia ora rai Tuihana. Okay. Tukuna te wairua kia rere ki ngā taumata hei arahi a tātou nei mahi, a tātou nei whakawhitinga whakaaro, whakawhitinga kōrero a te pōnei, me tā tātou whāinga tikanga a rātou mā. Kia mau kia itea, kia kore ai ngaro, kia pupuri ai, kia whakamaua, kia tīna, huie, taiki.
Taiki. Thank you, Katie. So, Table Kōrero was founded on the basis of, we wanted to showcase those in our community who are superstars basically, who are making wonderful contributions to their community, to the peoples of Aotearoa and beyond. And tonight joining us as our first speaker is the very gorgeous, the very lovely and delightful Rochelle Marumaru, all the way from Tauranga Moana. Nau mai haere mai, welcome Rochelle.
Kia ora, Tuihana.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
How's the nerves?
It's good. It's subsided a little bit.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, please. Where are you from, Rochelle?
So I'm from Wanganui, Raetihi. That's where my whānau whakapapa back to, but I was born and raised in Tauranga Moana. I spent a lot of my time back in Wanganui and Raetihi throughout my years growing up as a child. Spent a lot of time here in Tauranga as well, and Papamoa. I've got 3 children. I've got a son, 20, Keenan. My daughter, Journey, she's 15. And I've got my youngest girl, Reef, she's 8. I come from a family of 5. Got 3 brothers and 1 sister. My dad, he's from Raetihi. He comes from a whānau of 12. And so we grew up with a big whānau. And my mum, she's from England. And she came from a whānau of 3. So, that's a little bit about my family, a little bit about myself.
Now, you've got some very gorgeous green eyes that people won't be able to see too well through the screen, but I know that you do. Do they come from mum or from dad?
I'm going to say both. Because actually green eyes are quite prevalent back from my iwi, from where we're from. But then my mother, she's got hazel eyes and her brother's got blue eyes. So I'd say both sides.
Nice. Nice. Now, I heard you speak a couple of weeks ago around some of the challenges you've had within your whānau, with one of your children in particular. And I was just wondering if you feel comfortable, and I know we've spoken about this previously, but I'd love to hear about your story with your son. It was a very moving
my girl,
story.
My daughter.
Your girl, sorry.
Yeah.
And it was incredibly inspirational, and we'd love to hear that story. So could you share that with us?
Okay. So a number of years ago, I'm just going to start off by saying I didn't know that my daughter had epilepsy, but there were signs where something wasn't quite right. It wasn't until one day she had actually walked out onto the road nearly in front of a car, because she was what they had called a form of absence in the brain. So she was kind of like sort of off in a little bit of her own sort of world. So I took her to the doctor. From there, we were actually referred to the paediatrician, and had a EEG, a brain scan, and it had come out that yes, she has got abnormal activity going on in the brain. So they put her on Epilim, not to my delight. I didn't want to put her on medication. At the same time, I didn't know much about natural remedies as what I do today. But I actually seeked out natural remedies because I didn't want my girl on medication.
Have you always had a passion for going down the natural remedy route versus, say, Western science and medicine?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think
Okay.
I've got more of it now today. Like it's just growing over the years, my how I feel about natural healing, just healing naturally.
And
Um,
has that teaching, because I also know that you weave, is that right?
yeah, I've just recently taken that on, and I was actually introduced by a friend of mine, just making a hihiki, and I just fell in love. I just loved it. It was so therapeutic for me. Taught me a lot of patience, and I just love it. I just go into a different world when I'm working with harakiki. It's yeah, it's beautiful. I love it.
And that would sit
Mm.
quite nicely along your beliefs around rongoa, or around natural kind of remedies.
Yeah, yeah.
And so what did you do for your daughter in terms of using those natural remedies? So what were your kind of steps that you took?
I started searching for a natural remedy, and a friend of mine actually introduced me to the oils, Denise. And from there, she introduced me to frankincense, one of my most loved oils. And it was the top oil to use for my daughter. So I actually saved and I actually bought that oil because, of course, natural remedies aren't subsidized. So it's, if you want natural remedies, you're going to have to pay for that yourself. That's not something, because the doctors would give me a subsidized of $5 for the pills that Journey was taking. Um, so yeah, used frankincense with her. She was on Epilum for 18 months with no change whatsoever. She had multiple brain scans throughout those 18 months as well with no change. What I did see a change in my daughter is she was constantly tired. She was just like a zombie pretty much on the pills. I could see it. So I found frankincense. I used frankincense with her for 8 months. I used that topically. I used that aromatically and sometimes internally as well. Um, Constantly for 8 months. We went back for another EEG scan, and blow me down, she was clear. There was no abnormal activity in the brain whatsoever. Um, the doctors were quite a little bit taken back too because we hadn't had any change with the epilim whatsoever. And I told them what I'd been doing, and yeah, that was a happy day for Journey and I.
Mm.
It meant a lot, especially to my girl. She had to be supervised a lot of the times, couldn't walk to school by herself. And yeah, it was just, yeah, it wasn't, she didn't like it. And it changed for the better once she was off that medication. And she uses frankincense today still. So,
And so how
yeah.
long has that been since, you've, and obviously I would say that wouldn't just be to do with the frankincense, but also with the mother who was very set on having an alternative healing method for her daughter.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've always felt that way, of that there's always a plant or something natural that can help heal every ailment. And I'd prefer to go to natural remedies before man-made medicine. That's just personally for myself. Yeah.
And so how long, has it been since she's been on the epilim? Since the...
Um, she's been off epilim for, how long has it been? About 2 years now. She's been off
Wow.
epilim. Yeah. So she's
Wow.
solely just using frankincense. She's just got her own little roller bottle, just like a little roller bottle like that. And she
Mm.
just uses that daily. And yeah, and of course I aromatically diffuse it in the house too. So yeah.
I know that when I asked you to, and thank you for sharing that story, I found that story incredibly moving when I first heard it. And I know that you coming on board to talk about your story, you were like, oh, I don't know that people want to hear about me. Um, but, I know that you also do a lot of work in the community and that you've taken on weaving, which is a good thing. And it's great to hear that you're doing something for yourself. Can you just share with us perhaps some other challenges that you've had over the past year, and some of the positive things that you've made for your life, for you?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm just gonna start off. I've had a lot of challenges in the past year. One of my main challenges um, has been, I'm going to use the word adapt. Um, to adapt to change. So for me, it's been based around my girl, and changing the language in which, not that I speak to her, but just the language, I have to change it as she goes through the different years in her life. And it's hard when because she's 15 now, and she's grown into a young adult. And she's taught me a lot this year, and we've had good outcomes. I'm happy with the outcome that we've had. We communicate a lot better now, and that's what you need, especially with a teenage daughter. It's good to have that door open, and I'm glad that it's finally been open after such a long time, and challenges of going through, ups and downs, not knowing what to do, but then actually meditating on that and knowing what to do, so that's been a big challenge for me. And self-love is another one, and I always say that because it's something that I want to instill in my girls, to love themselves. I've spoken to my girls about this multiple times. It's something that I that's what changed my life and my journey, was self-love, was loving myself. And it can be a hard thing to do, to be quite honest, and very powerful thing to do. We did what we call mirror work, and just really looking at yourself, really. And it took me 2 weeks to look at myself. This is going back about 6 years ago now. So, it was powerful for me, and it changed my whole path in life, that one thing. Yeah.
So what's your superpower? What's your superpower, Rochelle?
Oh,
What's
what's
your
my
pūmanawa?
If I was to say in one word, and it's my middle name, Awhina, and that's something that I just love. I mean, it just fills my cup to help. I just love it, and I know what positions some wāhine can be in. I can feel like I just understand, and just want to help, just out of the goodness of my heart, not for anything else, but just to spread that awareness and give them a bit of empowering kōrero to talk about,
I love that. I love that. And what are some of your intentions? We're in the time of Matariki at the moment. What's some of your intentions for the year ahead for you?
Yep, for me.
Yeah.
I do want to get a lot more into weaving. I have sort of self-taught myself how to weave. I'm actually doing an online course of weaving as well at the moment. But I want a more hands-on sort of, I want hands-on. Like I learn by seeing a lot better. So that's one of my goals, to achieve. Another one is, I feel I've noticed that I like to talk with women and just talk about anything, anything can come up. Yeah. So that's another thing. I don't know how it's going to happen, but I thought incorporating, because for me, weaving was quite healing. It's very healing for the soul. And I could kōrero and weave all day. I just lose time in weaving, and that's another thing. And just self-love, really, your life changes when you love yourself. Really, it does. Yeah.
I love hearing you. Yeah, I love hearing you say that. By the way, I can't weave to save myself. I've tried, and I went to one raranga class, and I remember the kaiko saying to me, "Oh, there's always one in every class." Ka roha.
Oh.
I know, but it's okay. My pūmanawa, my talents are elsewhere. They're just not in raranga.
I just connect with it, and then I had a kōrero with my dad, and found out a story. My nan, so his nan, my great nan, she used to travel from Putarunui up to Taranaki, and she actually taught the people of Taranaki to weave, according to a story that my dad told me, and that was quite cool. And I knew she weaved, didn't know she traveled and taught, people in that area how to weave. So that was a cool story to hear. Yeah.
Cool. And do you know what her name was, Rochelle?
Hanerua.
Oh, lovely. And you know what? It's been awesome having you have a kōrero with me, because I know you're incredibly nervous. And look, you've let your light shine, and you know, you talk about helping other women. Well, this is, you know, in other wāhine, this is why we're here, right? Is to uplift others and to showcase others and to bring others to the forefront and to bring superstars like yourself of the community, because I know you do lots of community work also in Tauranga, and just for people to be aware of those contributions. Just before we go, can you tell us just quickly some of the things that you've done in your community, because I know you've done quite a bit.
Okay. So I've done Aroma Touch with the beautiful Gail Wātini. We go up to the Huria Marae and do Aroma Touch on the Kaumātua up there, and yeah, that's really cool. It's a nice connecting with. You can tell a lot by people's hands. You know, you can, and touch is very, very powerful. So that's one of the things that I have done. Held a Mother's Day retreat out with some ladies out at a cottage in the wilderness, and done a essential oil aromatherapy day out there with my girl Tash. So that was cool. I'm part of a community garden. So I'm very much in that space of teaching my kids how to grow their own vegetables organically, and not just rely on a shop to go buy your veggies. You can grow it, you know. So and having that healthy lifestyle too. So yeah, so I go and volunteer up there on a Wednesday. Yeah, so from 9 till midday, we just clean up the gardens and kōrero with the ladies up there, and we have some good conversations too. It's good, and you learn a lot. So yeah.
See, it's interesting. It's interesting hearing, you know, all the contributions that you make, because the other thing is a lot of the time we kind of take them for granted, and you know, a lot of us, there's been this ingrained thing around, you know, you don't talk about how sweet the kumara is, but sometimes it's not about talking about, well, it's just talking about your contributions and being comfortable with being able to say, you know, I do this and I do this and do this. And I'm actually listening to you thinking, wow, I definitely need to be doing more. I couldn't grow vegetable to save myself. You might have to come over here and teach me a thing or two.
Oh, it's healing, Tuihana. It's healing, putting your hands in the dirt. It's great.
I'm sure it is. I'm sure it is. You know, I think it's just a bit of vanity, if I'm being completely transparent and honest, gets in the way sometimes. Look, I really want to thank you, Rochelle, for coming on. It means an awful lot. And thank you for sharing all the things that you do. And lovely to hear that you go to Huria Marae and the garden, and your daughter's doing well, and to hear about some of the challenges you've had and some of the intentions that you're setting for yourself moving forward. It's been an absolute pleasure and delight. I'll welcome you back at the end of Katie's kōrero. But for now, thank you very much. And now we're going to hear from Hayes Putarunui, or Hay. Yeah, we just call it Hayes, right? I always want to say Kanawa, but I know that it's, you know, kind of not. So, well, it is, right? Hi, Noma, welcome to the gorgeous Hayes. How are you?
I'm good. And in the spirit of sisterhood, do I have red lipstick on my teeth? Oh, I do.
No. Do you? I can't quite see.
There we go.
But I do love the colour, Dal. I do love the colour. So tell me where you're from. For those that don't know you, tell us a little bit about yourself, please. That'd be awesome.
Cool. Kia ora e te iwi, ko Hayley tōku ingoa, no ki te taho tōku pāpā, ngō Ngāti te aitanga hauiti me Ngāti Pāhauera, ki te taha o tōku māma, no Ngāti Mania Potoahau. Kia ora.
Awesome, awesome. So you and I had a bit of a chat a couple of weeks ago. And can you just talk to us about some of the challenges that you've had over the past year and some of the challenges that you may currently have, and then we'll talk about all the good stuff as well. And challenges are actually learning, you know, I put them down to learning experiences, and from the most uncomfortable places comes the biggest growth. So talk to us about this, Hayes.
Yeah, thank you. So, I was just thinking in my head, oh gosh, I have so many experiences. Which ones had we shared, Tuihana? But we were talking in a work context, of course. And so my role at the moment is I'm really fortunate to have a really cool role. It's the Global Head of Diversity and Inclusion for Fonterra. And I always say Fonterra with a WH, so Fonterra. But of course, everyone will probably know and either love or hate or sit on the fence or wherever you fit, and the reasons are all different. But I've got a really cool role in this diversity and inclusion space, and D&I is really interesting because it almost feels like when I first went into this role, I thought it sort of sounded cool, and then it's like, God, I think this might be for, women or Māori women or, people of colour or, are you all right, Tuihana?
Yes, it's just a 17-year-old whose priority is food right now. So,
Fair
yes.
enough. Fair enough. I've got one of those, so I know exactly the priority. So, yeah, this D&I space, and it's really interesting because it's almost like it's been a narrative for a really long time. But despite it being an ongoing narrative, no one in the corporate space at least has managed to crack it. So it's a really interesting space. And so, my workplace, for example, is largely dominated by quite a homogenous. So by homogenous, I mean same. And I've been in the company for about 6 years, and look, individually and actually collectively on for the most part, and certainly in pockets, amazing, awesome, well-intended people, which I think it is, and you and I shared this experience around well-intended, but I think it's an interesting time to be alive, particularly amongst COVID, because, we had these issues like Black Lives Matter quickly accelerate us globally around people's appetites, and actually whether or not you've got an appetite to have this discussion that for a long time has largely been able to have been swept under the carpet, then it's glaringly obvious. It's a neon sign, this is the time for us to have these discussions.
Do you think that people are actually open to their appetite, though? Do you genuinely think that people are open to that appetite?
I don't know either, because I've had really recent experiences where I've tried to call it out, and the immediate reaction has been to come back and say, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry, I didn't mean to offend you. And immediately I'm like, well, you didn't. And actually, I don't think this is our issue to fix, actually. And that's the interesting thing about it. It's the people who created, I think largely, created these very issues we are now all trying to unpack, are the ones who have the responsibility, and the onus is on them to unpack and solve as well. I mean, we can educate, and people talk about allyship, but I think it's a lot more than that. They need to, you are expecting people to undo the layers of the very things that they have built their societies on. So authority, money, power, those are all assumed things that you and I, Tuihana, in a different life, sometimes I do imagine, I try to think about what I might come back with as in a different life. Some days when I was, when I was young, I used to look at Pākehās actually and think, oh gosh, I wish I had their thighs or their nice hair. When I was my age, I kind of think, oh, no, I'm good, because, black don't crack and all of that. But actually, I think as you get older and you get more comfortable in your skin, and listening to the show, I absolutely agree, because it's interesting, but that's been for me personally, that has definitely come later on in life. And I would just, I would love to traverse these spaces so that Māori women in particular, but, all women of colour in New Zealand and globally, but let's just keep it real. Let's start with Māori women in the first instance, don't have to traverse the same sorts of things, where you work so hard and it feels like the goalposts are constantly being shifted. And that's because again, when you think about who holds power, who holds authority, who, and I don't think it's unconscious bias. I think it's very deliberate bias in some cases. I think unconscious bias is a way to deflect and defend, but I think bias is very deliberate in some cases. And unfortunately, we're not mature enough to kind of go, yeah, am I ready to relinquish some of the power? Am I ready to relinquish? Am I ready to kind of go, whereas the face of success looked like this and it was benchmarked against this in the past, am I ready to? So to your, in a short, look, to be frank, I'm not convinced that they are, the appetite is there yet.
And then how does it affect you personally? You know, how does it, because are you placed in a position where you have to kind of, or you are compromising yourself and your values and I suppose the tikanga of our people, you know, I mean, but how does that affect you personally, Hayley, when you're placed in those environments? You know, because it's got to have an impact on a bit of your soul, you know, a bit of your wairua. So how does that impact on you? And then how do you navigate that?
Yeah, I think it does. And so when you sign up for these roles and this, you know, and look, let's be honest, the corporate space is one space, but it's not the only space. And I often am envious of our whānau who own communities because they make those immediate impacts. But there is a space. The point is there is a space for all of us. And in fact, there is a space for us on the top tables. We have been conditioned to believe that we're either service roles or you can even see it when the narrative was coming around essential workers, you know, people kind of assumed that those places are made for us. The top is made for us if we want it. How I keep myself sane is that, you know, you've got to keep yourself safe in the sense of my nan, who's not with us now, but she gave me a really good piece of advice one day, and it was essentially that there is always a bigger kaupapa than ourselves. So I coach myself a lot around, is it your ego that's a bit bruised here, or is it the bigger thing? And more often than not, it is. I do think it's ego that has this immediate when you know when it stings, and you've got to remind yourself that you are part of a bigger kaupapa, i.e., getting to traverse these spaces so that younger women or younger men, or actually our younger people, can accelerate faster than we have done to the top, because as I said, I think we still are a little bit conditioned, both ourselves but by society and New Zealand at this point in time, I mean, that the top is not intended for us, but it absolutely is. But I have to coach myself around ego. I literally even today had this scenario play out where, you know, old mate was being rather passive aggressive, and probably 2 years ago I would have immediately kind of emailed back, but I just was like, oh, you know, it's not worth it. And I went back. It was rather sanitized, but it's a good thing. You got to be up for it. You got to coach yourself.
Yes.
Yeah.
I last week was at an event at Vodafone, and Che was there, and it's interesting that I brought up the kumara, you know, analogy around don't talk about how sweet you are. And somebody in the audience asked Che that, you know, said, oh, but, you know, we don't like to talk about how sweet we are. And he said, we've been conditioned to believe that we shouldn't talk about how sweet we are, yet we are so sweet. You know, he said that with that has come that kind of framework, that kind of conditioning, as you referred to it as, where we don't talk about how sweet we are. But yet we should be able to, you know, because there are so many things that everyone has superpowers, everyone has magic, and everyone's good at certain things. You know, we've all got our pūmanawa and we've all got our pukinga. And another thing that we spoke about was that you'd actually formed a little bit of a ropu, I believe, with other ladies within Tāmaki Makaurau, within Auckland, who are facing those similar challenges. Is that correct?
Yeah, and it is. So this was literally about, we've got a choice, right? So I can either kind of struggle on my own, or actually just go out and find my people. And so I literally reached out to a couple of Māori and Pacific Island women, and that was all just about, let's just talk. We don't have to boil the ocean, as the saying goes. I don't even know where I got that from. I think the Pākehā say it all the time, so now I use it. I'm like, oh, I'll say that sounds neat. What it means is that, you know, you have to save the world. I'm so naughty sometimes.
Really? Shock horror.
Oh, yeah. Oh, listen, what? Yeah, I know, but it was literally just, so we had our first call, and it was just like within the first 30 seconds, I was like, oh, there's my people, you know, there are. And that's the other part of it, is that at the end of the day, we are wired differently, and that's absolutely okay. But remember, we can do both, because all of the places and all of the spaces are made for us as well. We can be very deliberate in where we choose to go. Also, though, I'm very clear that, you know, I'm not necessarily like, I think 10 years ago I would have been a lot more concerned about whether people like you and all the rest of it. Now I'm like, oh,
yes,
get on.
Yes.
Now I'm like, if you don't, well, you get in the line, it's fine. You know, there's a whole line over there like me, and I think you're going to be, if you prepare for hui, or you prepare for spaces or roles or whatever on the basis that you are seeking people to like you, then I think you are going to be unprepared every single time, and you're going to come up short. So don't make that one of the things that is your measures. Shift that a little bit. And so I'm quite keen on ensuring, you know, what is my position, what is my view. Flex, again, bearing in mind that there's always bigger kaupapa than ourselves, and kind of along that frame of, you know, what legacy do you want to use. And I think there are some time-tested virtues around empathy and love, manners in the sense of, you know, not being compliant or complicit. I mean manners in the sense of actually just being a really good person. And but you know, this comes with age, of course, because when you get old, you know, you have a lot of time to contemplate these things. But I think there are time-tested values that will stand and put you in good stead.
Talking about legacy, I mean, you have a grandmother that left an incredible legacy, and a great grandmother who left an incredible legacy. And your family is quite well regarded. Do you feel any pressure sometimes to think, oh, but I mean, I don't get that from you, because you're just so genuine. I mean, you don't seem to really give a hoot what people, you know, think about things sometimes. And you know, I quite like that. But do you sometimes feel that kind of, I don't know, pressure at all
No, I mean, I don't. And you know why I don't is because, first of all, so obviously I've got a legal background, and which means, you know, I was relatively good at reading and writing. One of the reasons why I don't feel bad about it is because my cousin Missy, who's an accountant, she's not creative either. And so when there's I do the minute that she does the books, and all the creative people come up with the cool ideas. So, and you know, I mean, the only time I start to think is when we ever played Pictionary, and I couldn't bloody draw a picture to save myself, and you know, like my mum are like doing these amazing things, and I'm like, but nah, I've never felt that. And in fact, one of the things that and one of the things I've reflected on is, so mum's obviously got 6 sisters, 6 brothers, one of 12. And you're right, amazing legacy. But for anyone that knew Nan, I think optically perhaps she was more well known for, of course, and it speaks for it. At the heart, just a genuinely, again, time-tested values around in Papa as well. You know, he had a speech actually that he would say, and any of my whānau, if they are in fact watching, will know this, and it was just, you know, be good, work hard, don't pinch, and love one another. And that, you know, I mean, sometimes if he happened to make eye contact with you around the don't pinch thing, you're like, hey, I'm not one of the other funny things too that we don't really talk about because it's kind of awkward, but he had a bit of a, you know, in this PC, I would put it, he was very interested in health, but a bit of a fat shamer. So, so we were always like, when we were on dad, you know, we were always conscious of what we were eating. And sometimes he would say things like, hey, you know, the mail is down the driveway, or how many sheep do you weigh? And I was like, oh my God, like, and, no. But the point was very loving. Their love story speaks for itself. And you know, I think I mentioned to you that some of my tougher lessons most recently have come from, you know, from love, and I think to Rochelle's point, I totally agree around. For women in particular, you can get quite set on perhaps why you've ended up on the wrong side of love, or who has wronged you, and you know, justifiably so in a lot of cases. But I think for me, when I was in that situation, how I came back with two things. One, again, Nan and Papa's legacy, and so instead of focusing on the kind of love that was lost, it was more around the scale at which I loved, and I knew love, and I felt love, and so. And I quite simply, I just had to say to myself, we're going to choose happiness, because this other self is not working. And so I would just encourage, you know, when you do find yourself, if you do find yourself in a spot of bother, just, you know, you've got to ignite that little flame, that little spark, and it will be there. Sometimes it will simmer, and sometimes it will feel like a massive, you know, a flame. And gosh, if you can have flame moments, those are actually amazing. But you will land, and you'll be fine. But try and shift your focus.
So just quickly, two quick questions. One is, what is your superpower? Name one of your superpowers.
It's love. You know, I love everyone that comes into my life. I love hard. I love from top to toe. And I love fashion too. I love good things in life. I love to the nth degree. So I love working hard when I'm all in. It's just I'm a all in, all out. And so there's both good and bad. And I think that is my superpower.
And the other is, what's one of your intentions for the year ahead?
It is to continue to good sleep, is a quality sleep is my reflection. And again, as I just, when I've got myself into a spot of bother and not thinking as I'd like to, or making decisions. So good quality sleep. Hot yoga, I absolutely love. I'm not that great at it, but I absolutely love. And then just on a personal basis, just being more, I guess, aware around, you know, again, how I'm treating others, how I'm helping others, how I'm serving others, how I'm serving myself, because that's just important. Mm-hmm. But just that quality around self-awareness, and making sure that I'm looking after others as much as I should be, but also to that point around, if you're always aiming to be liked, or, you know, then I think you'll come up short, because it's just like, don't worry about it. Just do yourself first, and then the people that will come into your world, they inevitably land.
Thank you so much for sharing your kōrero. And I have to say that I've been one of those people who's often worried about what other people thought or think, or, you know, so yeah, I've really enjoyed this kōrero. It's been awesome. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for opening up. It's really awesome. I just got a little note saying that lots of people were sending and showing lots of love. So both to you and Rochelle, thank you so much. Now you're going to stay on, and now I'm going to introduce the lovely Kate Cherrington. Thank you so much, Hayes. Speak again soon.
Kia ora.
Well, kia ora. No, my heart and my I'm gushing with you know, I'm being a fangirl, all right? I'm being a bit of a fangirl. So, whānau, this is the lovely, we call her Katie, but you can call her Kate, but our lovely Katie Cherrington. Katie, tell us a bit about where you're from, please.
Well, te taho toku papa, ko ngā tihine te kapu tai ngā iwi, ngā puhi whānui hoki. Toku mama no motu pohu e ngai Pākehā te iwi. So my father was raised in the swamps of Waihine in the far north, and met my mother, who's Pākehā, Scots, Irish, English, hearty from Bluff. Where we were raised, our whānau was raised down there. So I am the kauaimua of the family, the firstborn, but I'm not the eldest. I have a brother and two younger sisters, and Alex, Sarah, and Mata, but the Pōtiki, she's not the last to come. We have my sister Mere, who is our whāngai and very precious to us, who arrived when I was 5 years old, into our family. And then, of course, over the years, our home was full of whāngai. So.
Yeah. So Katie, it's such a honour to actually have you, you know, as part of Table Kōrero tonight, as it is with Hayes, and it is it is with Rochelle. And it's been amazing. And I know you're not a huge social media person or a huge public person, but you've touched so many people's lives. So can you tell us a little bit about the mahi that you do in terms of Aotearoa, but also within the Indigenous space? That'd be awesome if you could share with us.
Just the mahi. Well, I get the privilege.
Yeah, and about your experiences, you know?
Yeah. Well, I get the privilege of being alongside communities, and in terms of the solutions that they're wanting to, I guess they're the author of their own solutions, and I get to be alongside communities as they come up with the most innovative ways of advancing, of thriving. And so my work for the last gazillion years, I started in education in the tertiary sector, probably 25, 30 years ago. Had the privilege of being alongside some amazing leaders in the wānanga sector. Got to see the growth of an institution that started as a movement, you know, on a piece of swampland, on a dump site in Te Awamutu, to grow into something that's an institution, but still hold on to where it can, the idea of being a movement in terms of wānanga, not being just bricks and mortar, but a way of thinking and being and knowing. That experience has taken us around the world, and part of developing leadership and self-care and self-leading in our lives with our families. That opportunity has taken us all across to other Indigenous community, iwi taki around the world, States, Hawaii, Japan, kind of every Australia, as we go and seek. Well, we find each other here. We find each other, and the thing that brings us together are the common values, you know, those of relationship, those of being responsible for, and our relationship to not only one another, but to the earth, to the waterways, and seeking out our kin across the world and being responsible in that, and learning how to give and take and be with one another, you know, reciprocity. So, and then sharing that out, you know, redistribution. This will sound very familiar because that was a gift given to us from our Kuia Donna Harris over in New Mexico. So that values-based way of living and being and sitting in your leadership, whether it be within your family, within an institution you're working with, within your community, really just has held us in good stead. So you asked me about my mahi, and honestly, forever people have said, what do you do? And it's not. I just get to be, I get to be places alongside the most amazing innovation in the world, and I get to be a witness to it, and then I get to share it. What works, what doesn't.
Can I ask, where has that spark come from? You know, in terms of this passion. We won't call it mahi, right? Because it's a passion. So where did that? It's exactly. And it is a life of servitude too. You know, we're giving to others a lot, and I will be asking you about yourself soon. But you know, where's that spark come from for you?
So in my home, you know, being raised in a whānau, my father's ngā tihine from Waihine, raised with certain values, a large home. My grandfather died when my father was 10. He's from a large family, 12 surviving children, raised by a mother who just loved unconditionally. And that's what I really loved about Hayes' kōrero. You love fully, you know, top to toe, no matter where you're from. So I was raised with manaki te tangata ahakoa kōwai, ahakoa no hea. That was the big thing in our house. You love people, you're welcome, no matter where they're from, no matter who they are, what colour their hair is, what size they are, you bring them in. So that was one of the things we were raised with. And being raised in a home with my father being a native speaker of Māori, English was a second language. My mother came from a home that was wealthy, and learning to live across one another, families learning to have to love one another over time, and it did take a lot of time. That's what I was raised in. So not learning to compromise in any way, just love a little harder and understand one another a lot better. So I was raised to be diplomatic. I was raised that way because it would have been so hard. And my parents, it wasn't easy for them in the 70s in Southland, raising the kids. So that's, and I say the spark in terms of being alongside people. I just have loved relationships, has got me everywhere.
Yeah.
I need to be across the world.
I remember you sharing a story once about how your mother served fish heads in Royal Dalton.
Oh,
and
yeah.
And I remember having a bit of a chuckle because that's something my grandmother would have done, you know. And while you're doing all your passion, you know, while you're living in your passion, Christian, how do you look after you? Because I know you're incredibly giving of self to many, but what do you do for you, Katie? What do you give back to yourself?
Okay, so I've got a couple of things that I do.
Okay.
And it was very hard for me over COVID. I actually draw energy from everybody around me. So a hug means a lot to me, actually. I draw energy from the people that I'm with constantly. And my little, I guess, my confession for tonight, I came in pretty low in energy, and so I really focused on what Hayes and Rochelle were sharing, and I was like so excited by it, and I felt that I was replenished enough from their conversation to be able to talk to you now, Tuihana. So I'm clear that I am taking as much as I draw upon everybody else's energy, to be absolutely honest, and my father did that as well. When he was alive, we were able to go into a room, you draw some energy and you learn something from every exchange. So I had to learn how to listen. I grew up listening so that I could learn from whatever exchange I was having, and then I get energy. So I'm being straight up, and I found Netflix this year. It was quite exciting.
Oh no, that can be quite dangerous.
I can't do it, you know, and I'm really not good on social media because I'd fall in. And the other thing is because for me, exchanges have to be absolutely genuine and real. And so it's not good for me to be in those spaces for too long. But I did discover Netflix. That was quite exciting.
Well, it's funny because another very close friend of ours, or she's more like a sister and a cousin, would be Leanne Muntz. And I know she's listening in. And I know that she discovered Netflix, but she discovered a series of Netflix, and then she'd sit up till goodness knows what o'clock, having watched every episode. And the other one, another close friend that we lost recently, was Afimo, who said she could never give herself truly to social media because she knew she'd just get totally engrossed by it. And you know, when you talk about energy, taking people from not just drawing on people's energy in the room, drawing being the word. I'm very good at that, but I wouldn't say that I've been particularly good at listening. I just get excited about, you know, and then you kind of miss things. So I think, you know, a good learning from that is to start listening. So thinking about the year ahead, and thank you for being so transparent too about, you know, coming into this and you know, into this kōrero. What does the year ahead look like for Kate Cherrington? never mind the husband. He's probably there somewhere. We love him to bits too. But what's some of the things that Kate Cherrington's going to do for her? And remember, we've got lots of people listening, Katie, so that we're all going to be accountable to one another. No pressure.
Well, actually, this year, it's a really tough one because I'm kind of in motion right now, and so I'm back traveling again, and I'm doing all the work with community alongside of them again, and helping to resource that. So how will I resource myself, and how will I take care of myself? I think I will sleeping. I think was I think Hayes mentioned that one, sleeping. But I'm actually wanting to reach out more back to whānau, like yourselves and Lee, Shushu, and my crew, to actually have some social time. I talked to Bentham, last year. It took him weeks, and he managed to bring some very dear friends, Kiriana and Kelly and Hinton, down to Wellington. And then they put me in the diary. I had to schedule it. It was a surprise. It had to look like a hui so that I'd show up. So it's terrible. So this year it would be really lovely to actually have social time, just to talk and shoot the breeze. That I'd look forward to that. I'm not going to be on kōtiti so much anymore overseas. And I guess the other thing I'm going to do this year, which isn't so much adding to anything, is I need to let go of my children. Stop my kids. All of them. I just get such a buzz out of seeing them growing and developing, Hana Te Kōwhai and Hayley and Tuakoi and Tahuaroa, but I'm actually struggling with the empty nest syndrome because, as you'll know, forever my house is full. I get a buzz when my house is full. Saying and Hanamereaiha, and the house is always full. And so now Bentham and I are rattling around. We've got Tahuaroa still, and I'll hold on to it for as long as I can. But so next year is about letting go, actually. Especially our tamariki mokopuna, and enjoying their time in the world, but perhaps just letting them go a little bit more. Yeah.
Wow. Our 17-year-old recently got his restricted license, and I was like, yeah, man, we've got some space, we've got some freedom, we don't have to be doing the drop-offs and the pickups, and taking his brother here and there and his cousin and stuff, and I was like, yeah. And then I stopped and thought about, oh my gosh, actually, what are the realities of that moving forward? And he's probably going to be moving out of home soon, and I didn't want to think about that. Katie, you talked about relationships. I share that same whakaaro. I think relationships are just key to so many things in life. Would you say that, and this will probably be our last question before we bring back the other speakers, would you say that that's one of your superpowers has been around, relationships? Because I know you've got many across the world, but would you say that, that's kind of one of your superpowers, is your ability to navigate and journey your way through all the different kind of people that you come across in terms of, your life?
Yep, and I think I could never be a weaver like Rochelle. I braid and my hands don't, but I like weaving the relationships. Yes. I really love the weaving of that and seeing things grow and whānau thrive through relationships and through brokering that, because I could have more for me, and I do. Yes. I learn from all those relationships, but it's of no value really unless it's an assistance to others and brokering relationships for others. That's been probably one of the greatest joys of my life. And there's one other thing I just want to share, and it was because Hayes and Rochelle were really impactful in their kōrero. We talk about in our journey of leadership and relationship, that desire to get to those tables. For me, it can't be just about us as women or Māori getting to the table, because it's Māori in governance. It's about being Māori and the governance structure itself being Māori, and that maybe there's a way where the way we view relationship and the value of that is woven into all of our leadership, including whatever tepu we're sitting at. So you know, those are the things I desire to see and will continue to kind of strive for, especially at the governance tables that I'm sitting at right now, which go from corporate right through to Māori.
So just, sorry, there is one more question. Do you think that there's an expectation around certain behavioural patterns of what a leader looks like? Because I believe that the kind of antiquated model of leadership is currently being quite challenged. And I'm wondering, what's your thoughts on that?
Look, I think there was a time and place for hero leadership, and there's certain models out there, right? One of them's hero leadership. Someone come and save the day. We're going to, and very charismatic, autocratic, almost these leaders coming to save. But there's a time now, and what you're doing now in hosting, there's this time for host leadership now where people can come in and you weave people in and people come in and out as the skills are required. But the thing, Tuihana, is there are a lot of amazing frameworks out there, and I get to facilitate them across different governance groups across the country. But at the end of the day, the actual doing of the leader ring, not about leadership, but when you're doing the leading, that's a whole other thing. And when you come up against challenges and you come up against the risks, it's a whole other thing. And I think we need to get more real about sharing that. So there's lots of different frameworks for leading, for leadership. Yeah. But man, when we're actually leading, it's a whole other thing. I am.
Yeah. I think the other thing, and I'm just going to ask Hayes and Rochelle to come back on, is that there's a real space, I think, too, for heartfelt leadership versus kind of versus corporate, you know, being people-centric in terms of leadership.
Sure.
You know, because I would say that, and I might make an assumption here, Rochelle, and you can pull me up at any time, but I would say that you know, often we don't see ourselves as leaders, but yet when Rochelle talks, she's leading her family, she's leading her community, and she's leading it from a heartfelt space. I think that people-centric and heartfelt leadership, I think there's a real opportunity. Do you agree or disagree? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that, any of you.
I totally agree with what you just said, Tuihana. Yeah. Totally agree. Yeah. And
I'd probably say, if coming from, you know, whakaaro Māori, it's puku leadership. It's that deep-seated aroha. You know, it's not about I'm in love with something. It's that deep-seated aroha that comes from the core of your very being, from the top to the toe, everywhere. You know, so it's heart puku. Yeah. It's stuff that drives.
Yeah. Hayes, do you have any comments to that?
Yeah, I just think leadership has lots of different faces as well. So leadership to you know, as Katie was saying, around different spaces, and I think instinctively. So sometimes actually our instincts are the toughest ones to challenge, because it's often, you know, and I think of my experiences, I actually instinctively knew what was going on and where I needed to be, but I spent a lot of time pushing that down. And we do that, sometimes we do that for really right reasons. We do it because we love others and it's for the right time, but inevitably you have to be courageous and you have to trust your instincts and go with them. And that will set you up better in the long term, because I think while you might get that short term gain, inevitably it's better. So in leadership, I think is the same as well. Sometimes the toughest calls are the right calls, and just think around long-term impact rather than short-term gain, because even, you know, our roles as mothers, our roles as partners, those are all matter, but we can't be the best of those if we are not ourselves as well. And sometimes I think we sacrifice that. So just leadership has lots of, but trust your instincts first and invest in yourself, because that's going to set you up for the long term.
Geez, I could carry on this kōrero, but I can see that time is of the essence for many people. I just want to acknowledge Nick Tikiri, who's given me this beautiful dress, sponsored this beautiful outfit. So to Nicola Tikiri, we thank you for your contributions. I'm enjoying wearing your gear. It's beautiful. But and I want to acknowledge and thank Dorothy McLaughlin and especially Nina Kay Tane Tinaro, who are behind the scenes helping to make this magic happen, because it's our first time going live via Yard Stream or Stream. Is it StreamYard or Yard Stream? I don't know which one it is, but one of those. Hey, but thank you all so much for sharing your whakaaro, for sharing your kōrero. It's been such an incredible hour of conversation. I'm sure that many of those that have either watched live or will watch later on will get a little something from each of you. So thank you for sharing some taonga with us this evening. It's been wonderful. I feel like we could yak for a whole another hour. It's been awesome. But are there any closing comments or words from any of you before we finish off for the night?
I just want to say thank you to Rochelle. And the thing I learned tonight around, like, you give so joyfully without obligation. And I think that's a really important thing to remember, that when we're of service, it's not, oh, here I go, I've got to pick up a tea towel. You clearly do this, here we go again. It's not that, eh? There can be no obligation to this. And I think you really, really exemplified that. It's joyful. Your service is joyful, and that's the learning I got. And Hayes, just the fact that you love so hard, and I have to be so grateful that you love our family too and our kids. But that's a hard thing, and you've talked about it tonight, that no matter where you are, you just got to always go in with that, and it holds you in good stead. And Tuihana, to you, just thank you for hosting this quarter, and you did really good questions. So thanks for giving us that opportunity, and I've come away feeling so much more energised. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Rochelle or Hayes, any last comments or kōrero from you?
I just want to say, just be mindful of our thoughts. Our thoughts can be very powerful, and I believe that, you can create what you think. You can do that, and it all starts with our thoughts too. So if we've got positive thoughts and positive mindset about things, you can only create that. So yeah, I just want to leave it on that note.
Thank you so much. And Hayes?
Oh, and look, my reflection is just actually remember to have fun, right? So I was gonna actually say the F word, but I wanted to quickly go straight to fun, because I think it's important. It's so important in life to have fun and make. You can't. There are so many times for seriousness and tikanga, and they are all absolutely appropriate. But I think particularly for Māori women, my ask of all of us is that we will remember to have fun, and it's so important. So surround yourself with people, go out and find people if you are struggling. Go out and find your tribe, go out and find your ladies, go out and find your people, and just remember to have fun, because it's so important. There's a long time, and we can spend a lot of time being unhappy, and sometimes it's necessary, but make sure to have fun is my Matariki reflection.
Thank you so much. It is a great time. It's Matariki. It's a time for us to set goals. It's time for us to reflect and look to the future. To Rochelle, you've been absolutely incredibly inspiring. I thank you so much for the sharing of your kōrero. To Hayes, it's always fun, girl. With you, it's always fun. And I was waiting for the little something, and it was always there. So thank you so much for sharing tonight. And to Katie. So Katie's been. I'm really grateful to Katie. We've been doing some mentoring and together, and she's been awesome. But just a huge mihi, and a huge mihi to everyone that's listened in tonight. It's awesome, and thank you all again. And I'm going to ask Katie to close us with karakia, please. Thank you, Katie.
Kia ora tātou. Unuhia, unuhia, unuhia ki turu tapunui, kia wātea, kia māma te ngākau, te tinana, te wairua, koiara e rongo whakairi ake ki runga kia tīna.
Tīna.
Huie.
Tai ke ke. Happy Matariki, everybody.
Matariki.